Okay, so, this week you've given us some really interesting sources to dive into.
Definitely fascinating stuff.
Yeah, a real peek into the future, it feels like, with this
Oh, yeah?
this breakthrough announcement from Explore Science.
Big announcement.
Huge, right. An AI system that's not just, thinking about science, but like actually doing it, like the whole thing,
Then, yeah,
end to end with human participants. I
it's
mean,
wild.
it's mind-blowing, right? And then, almost like to prove their point,
Yeah.
we have this research paper. It's called Strategic Visual Memory Allocation During Complex Mental Rotation.
Catchy title.
And the AI seems to have actually written it, which is
Yeah.
just amazing.
It really is. Your curiosity has zeroed in on a really pivotal moment, I think.
Yeah.
We're seeing artificial intelligence move past
Yeah.
just crunching numbers. It's now actively participating in scientific discovery in the real world with all its messiness. And at the same time, we're looking at a study about how our brains handle visual information and mental manipulation. That kind of challenge this very AI scientist had to tackle. So what might this AI teach us about the nature of discovery itself? And what do its findings tell us about our minds? That's what we're here to unpack.
That is the heart of it, yeah. To figure this out, find those real aha moments for everyone listening.
Exactly.
We're going to dig into the guts of this AI scientist, not just what it does, but the really innovative stuff, like how it does it,
Right.
and then explore the surprising findings of this cognitive psychology study it produced. So get ready, folks. This is going to be a potentially revolutionary look at both AI and, well, ourselves.
Buckle up.
So, okay, let's just jump right in with this Explore Science announcement. An AI actually running experiments on people. That's
Yeah.
a game changer, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
What's so groundbreaking here is that Explore Science has created an AI system that bridges the gap between computational AI and real-world experimentation. They're making it clear that this isn't just about fancy analysis of existing data or simulations. This system actually formulates its own research questions
Right.
and goes out and tests them
Amazing.
with real people.
Right. They even mentioned Sakana AI, which makes that autonomous machine learning,
It's generation system.
yeah, which is super impressive.
Yeah.
But this Explore Science system takes things a step further, right? Like into the physical world.
Exactly. It takes that self-direction into the realm of actual experiments. This is a complete scientific life cycle, from the initial idea to the finished report, all driven by AI.
Driven by AI, the whole thing. Whoa.
Yeah.
And it's not like just one single AI doing everything, right?
Yeah.
They talk about a multi-agent architecture with human-inspired cognition, which sounds like a really smart approach, right? What's the main advantage of that?
The main advantage is that it mirrors how human scientists actually work
Oh, okay.
by collaborating and specializing. They're trying to equip individual AI agents with principles that resemble human cognitive abilities, and then have these agents work together on a research problem. They've found that this collaborative approach allows them to tackle much more complex scientific inquiries than a single AI ever could.
So it's like having a team of AI researchers with different specializations.
That's a great way to put it. They've created this dynamic structure with what they call orchestrators and specialists.
Administrators and specialists. Got it.
Think of the orchestrators as like the senior scientists.
Okay.
They define the goals of the research, and they coordinate the efforts of the other agents. They mention a method agent,
Oh, right. Yeah.
which designs the experiment,
Yeah.
and a data analysis agent,
Right.
which analyzes the numbers.
Okay.
Those are examples of orchestrators. And then you have specialists, like highly skilled technicians,
Yeah.
like a coding agent, which writes the software, and an archivist agent that keeps all the records organized.
Mm-hmm.
This division of labor makes the system much more efficient and sophisticated.
That makes sense. So much more efficient, yeah. So we have this team structure, right?
Yep.
But the agents aren't just like working randomly, are they?
No.
They've got some guiding principles.
You do.
Right.
Uh-huh.
4 key cognitive principles. Okay, let's break those down a bit. Abstraction. What does that look like for an AI?
So abstraction in this context basically means that the AI focuses on the big picture, like the underlying patterns and principles, rather than getting lost in specific rules.
Right.
So instead of having these rigid step-by-step instructions, the agents are given broader goals, and they have the freedom to develop their own rules of thumb, their own heuristics.
Heuristics.
Yeah, for achieving those goals.
Yeah.
For example, the figure creation agent isn't told exactly what type of graph to make,
Right.
but it develops its own understanding of what makes a good figure. depending on the specific data it's working with. It develops its own standards.
So it's learning
But I
to
think,
judge what's a good figure for different types of data and research questions.
yep,
Very cool. Okay, what about metacognition? That's where the AI is like reflecting on its own thought process, right?
that's right. They've built in this structured self-reflection.
Hmm.
Before an agent finishes a step,
Okay.
it evaluates its own approach. Like the data analysis agent, for example, it will check if the type of data it has collected fits the requirements of the statistical tests
Okay, yeah.
before it runs those tests.
Right,
If not, it'll explore other methods and document why it made that choice.
right.
This built-in self-assessment is crucial for ensuring the results are reliable.
Yeah, it's like a built-in quality control layer, which is
Yeah.
essential.
Yeah.
Then we have decomposition, breaking down complex problems into smaller chunks.
Right. This is key for tackling really intricate scientific questions. When the methods agent needs to turn a hypothesis into a testable experiment, it breaks it down into concrete steps,
Eh,
figuring out the variables, designing the manipulations, picking the right tools.
makes sense.
And because this process is transparent,
Yeah.
other agents and even the human researchers can check each step to make sure it makes sense.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And then finally, autonomy. This means the agents are sort of like self-directed within their task, right?
Yeah, exactly. The overall goals are set,
Right,
but each agent works independently towards its objective.
right.
And it can even create new sub-goals or even instantiate new sub-agents
Wow.
if it thinks that's necessary to get a good result.
So it's like a self-organizing team in a way.
They keep working and refining their approach until their supervising agent says, okay, good job, you're done.
Oh, that's really fascinating. They also mentioned something called dynamic memory. What was it, a DRAG system?
Yeah.
How does that factor into the AI's research?
So think of it like this. The AI is building a specialized, constantly evolving knowledge base for each research project.
Okay.
Instead of one big general information store.
Right. The DRAG system creates focused libraries that are tailored to the specific research question. It pulls in papers, extracts key info, processes it, and gets rid of anything that isn't directly relevant.
Smart.
It's like human researchers immersing themselves in the most important literature for their project, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This keeps the AI focused and prevents it from getting overwhelmed by too much information.
Yeah, that makes total sense. You wouldn't want it going off on tangents, right?
Exactly.
And then they use a mixture of agents or MOA approach, which utilizes various, those big, large language models.
Right, the LLM.
The LLMs, yeah. Why do they do that?
Well, the thing is, different LLMs are good at different things, different cognitive tasks.
Gotcha.
So by combining different models from companies like Anthropic, OpenAI, xAI, Google,
Wow, the best of the best.
they can use the strengths of each model for the specific parts of the research workflow where they excel.
Oh, okay. So it's like a,
Yeah.
they even listed which models they use for what? Claude 3.7 Sonnet. Right, that's their main workhorse.
Okay, so Claude 3.7 Sonnet for the heavy lifting, the scientific reasoning, the complex coding, and then O3 Mini.
Yeah, the intelligence sidekick.
Okay, providing extra perspectives,
Yeah.
and then Grok 3.
That's for those pragmatic decisions, creative brainstorming, that sort of thing.
Okay, got it.
Then there's Gemini 2.5 Pro, which brings in powerful vision capabilities.
Oh, that's cool.
And finally, O1, which has, like, a vast store of scholarly knowledge.
It really is like an AI dream team, right?
Yeah.
Each with their own special talent.
It is. It is.
Right.
And this synergy allows the system to handle a much wider range of challenges, which makes it much more robust. They found this MOA approach leads to better accuracy and fewer errors.
Oh, that's good. So we've got this team of AI agents, right?
Yep.
Guided by human-inspired principles,
Hmm.
with a dynamic and focused memory,
Exactly.
and using all the best LLMs. Okay, so how does this all come together to run experiments with real people?
Well, their initial focus was on cognitive psychology, which obviously requires studying human behavior directly.
Makes sense.
They used popular online platforms like Prolific and Pavlovia to recruit participants.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
To make sure the human oversight team could validate everything and follow ethical guidelines, they gave the AI system pre-validated cognitive tasks and questionnaires that had already been used in published research.
So they weren't just letting the AI create brand new, untested experiments.
Exactly. They started with established methods.
Okay, good. And how did the AI manage the recruitment on Prolific? Like, how did that actually work?
So the implementation agent took care of this. It used the platform's API to define all the parameters for recruiting participants.
Okay.
Things like how many people they needed, age range, any special
Oh,
criteria,
yeah, like if they needed...
like normal vision,
Yeah.
that sort of thing, all based on the pre-approved ethics protocol. Then it drafted the study description and consent forms, making sure everything was compatible with Pavlovia.
Where the tasks were hosted. And they emphasized ethical compliance and participant privacy,
Oh, absolutely.
which is so important, right?
Yeah.
How did they ensure that with an AI in control?
They implemented a manual verification step before any study could launch.
Oh, that's good.
Real humans on the Explore Science team carefully reviewed all the settings and the study design the AI had created.
See, so there's like a human check in place.
Exactly. So while the system can run autonomously, there's this crucial ethical safeguard in place.
Okay, good to know. And what about privacy? How was that handled?
All the data is managed by the online platforms,
Okay.
and it's all de-identified before the AI sees it. The AI only works with anonymized data, so no personal info is ever accessed or processed by the AI.
That's reassuring.
Yeah.
So the AI handles this entire workflow, which they've broken down into 12 phases.
Right.
That's a lot of steps. Let's talk about some of the key ones. It all starts with hypothesis formulation, right?
It does. The AI identifies potential research questions through automated reasoning.
Yeah.
Then it validates those questions by looking at the existing scientific literature, uses the Semantic Scholar API for that.
Oh, okay.
Then it formulates hypotheses,
Right.
specific aims for the research.
Okay.
It scores each idea based on factors like novelty, potential for discovery, and feasibility.
Oh, interesting.
This scoring helps prioritize the most promising directions.
So it's like a built-in ranking system.
Exactly.
Cool. So after the hypothesis, we move on to the experimental design phase. This is where things have to be super rigorous, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The system designs very specific protocols to test the hypothesis. This includes doing power analyses,
Okay.
which means the AI writes code to extract parameters from previous studies and calculate how many participants are needed for statistically valid results.
Oh.
It also creates a pre-registration document.
Oh, right.
That document outlines the hypotheses being tested and the entire plan for analyzing the data.
Oh, that's important.
This is a gold standard practice in science
Yeah.
because it helps prevent bias when interpreting results.
Right.
And the AI keeps checking its work against this pre-registration throughout the whole process.
So it's like a built-in mechanism to keep things honest.
Exactly.
Okay, so what happens once you have all the data from the participants? We move into data analysis, right? Yeah.
Exactly. This is where the system does its heavy-duty analysis. It goes way beyond just basic stats.
Okay, so more than just like a p-test or something.
It develops protocols for cleaning the data,
Yeah.
figures out how to handle outliers,
Okay.
calculates any derived variables,
Right.
and uses all sorts of complex statistical procedures.
Wow, so it can handle...
It's designed to handle really large and complex data sets.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
And they highlighted how important the collaboration between agents is in
Collaboration.
this phase.
Yeah, different agents, different LLMs.
Right.
They can cross-validate and refine the analysis, adapt to the data, and even correct errors.
Right.
It's a really elegant system.
So cool. And then to make sense of all this data, we need what? Visualizations.
Of course,
Oh.
the AI automatically generates visuals of the methodology and the findings.
Oh, okay.
It can create custom graphics, pick the best type of charts, and even writes captions that explain what the figures show and why they matter.
That's amazing.
It's all about clarity and making the results easy to understand.
Yeah, because a picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Exactly.
Especially with data. And then the final stage, right, bringing everything together, report generation.
Precisely. The system creates a complete scientific manuscript.
Wow.
It includes the figures,
Right.
all the citations to previous work,
Right.
and it provides a discussion of the findings, placing the research within the context of existing theories and discussing what the results mean for future research.
That's a lot.
It is.
They also mentioned this problem with, AI sometimes hallucinating references and how they had a way to prevent that.
Right. They had this verification system
Yep.
that checks all the citations against the actual published papers.
Okay. That's a good safeguard.
Yeah. So they really are aiming for the highest level of scientific rigor.
Oh, yeah. And they stressed how important thorough and critical review was at every step.
Absolutely.
And they even mentioned this pre-peer review tool, paper-wizard.com. Have you heard of that?
I have, yeah. It's interesting.
It's all very impressive. So to show off what this system can actually do, they presented this cognitive psychology case study.
Right.
They investigated the relationship between our ability to remember visual details and our ability to mentally rotate objects. And this is where it gets really interesting, folks. What did their AI scientists discover about this connection?
Well, you might think that people who are good at remembering details would also be good at mentally manipulating objects, right?
Yeah, seems logical.
But the AI found only a weak correlation.
Oh, okay, so that's surprising.
Yeah, and even more surprisingly, these correlations didn't get stronger when they made the tasks harder. They stayed pretty much the same.
That's really unexpected.
It is.
So what's the main takeaway here?
The main takeaway is that these two skills, remembering visual details and mental rotation, are actually somewhat independent. It suggests our brains don't have just one visual center,
Okay.
but rather specialized units for handling different types of visual processing.
So that challenges the old view.
It does, yeah.
Interesting. And how efficient was this whole process?
Well, the AI took just 12 and a half hours
Wow, that's fast.
and cost about $98 in LM tokens.
That's incredible. Much faster and cheaper than traditional research, right?
Significantly, yes. They also mentioned that the AI did things that human researchers sometimes forget, like doing a detailed analysis of how reliable their measurements were,
Oh, that's good.
which shows the AI's commitment to being thorough.
So it's not just fast, it's thorough too. They were also very open about the fact that this paper was made without any human changes,
Right, which led to a few quirks.
like the figure placement issues and the very conservative approach to cleaning the data, which resulted in more participants being excluded than usual.
Yeah. They even mentioned that their paper wizard tool had flagged these things as potential issues.
Which shows their commitment to self-critique and improvement.
Absolutely. And they said a more detailed paper is coming out soon.
Right.
Okay, so big picture now.
Mhm.
What are the implications of all this? What could this mean for the future of AI scientists?
Well, one of the biggest implications is the potential for collaboration between humans and AI in research.
Yeah, so not replacing scientists.
Not replacing, but empowering them.
Right.
AI could become a powerful tool to boost human creativity and insight. Imagine collaborative projects where AI handles the tedious, data-heavy tasks.
Yeah.
This could really accelerate scientific discovery.
It could free up human researchers to think about the bigger question.
Exactly. And with so much scientific literature out there, AI could be invaluable for connecting the dots between different fields.
Making connections that humans might miss because it's just too much information to process.
Exactly. They were upfront about some limitations, though. They
Mhm.
said error handling isn't perfect yet. Yeah, it's still early days.
And sometimes things need to be restarted. But these issues should get better as LLMs get more advanced.
And they did mention that some scientists had already looked over their results, right?
He did, yeah, as a preliminary validation step.
Okay, so what's next? Where do they go from here?
Well, they plan to expand the AI's work beyond cognitive psychology,
Oh, into other areas.
things like climate science,
Ah.
astronomy. And they want to make the AI better at refining existing theories when it finds something unexpected.
So it can kind of like update our understanding of things.
Yeah, exactly.
So cool. It really feels like the line between AI and science is blurring.
It is, it is.
This could revolutionize how we solve problems using adaptable human AI research teams.
It's exciting.
Yeah, super exciting. So this AI scientist hasn't just been making announcements, right? It's been busy producing actual research. The paper you brought up, Strategic Visual Memory Allocation During Complex Mental Rotation, turns out to be the very paper this AI seems to have created.
Yeah, that's the one Explore Science highlighted in their announcement. It's a really cool look into how we juggle visual information in our working memory while trying to mentally rotate objects. And they also looked at whether the vividness of our mental imagery plays a role.
So they were looking at how these things interact, the memory, the rotation, the vividness.
Exactly. It's a complex system.
Okay, so what did the study actually look like? How did they approach this?
Okay, so they had 155 participants,
Okay.
and they used multiple tasks.
Yeah.
First, they measured how well people could hold visual information in their short-term memory.
Like how much they could remember?
Yeah, exactly. They had to remember the orientation of colored rectangles.
Okay.
And they made it harder by changing how many rectangles there were, 3 or 5.
Okay.
That's the set size. And they also varied how long people had to remember the orientations,
Got it.
1 second or 3 seconds. Then they tested mental rotation abilities.
Okay.
People had to decide if two 3D block figures were identical or mirror images.
Okay.
And these figures were shown at different angles.
To make it harder, I imagine.
Right, it's 0, 50, 100, and 150 degrees. And finally, they gave everyone a questionnaire.
Okay.
the VVIQ2, which measures how vivid people's mental images are.
So it's all about how clearly they can picture things in their mind.
Exactly. So they were looking at memory capacity, mental rotation efficiency, and how vivid people's mental images are. It's a lot.
A lot going on there. So what were the big findings? What did they learn from all of this?
Okay, well, first, as we talked about before, there was only a small correlation between visual working memory and mental rotation performance. This adds more evidence to the idea that these two abilities are at least partly separate.
Right, not as connected as we might think.
Yeah. And making either task harder didn't change this relationship much.
Huh, interesting.
It is, right. And maybe surprisingly, even though vivid mental imagery was linked to better visual memory overall, it didn't seem to affect how the harder tasks impacted performance. This suggests that people with different levels of imagery might just use different strategies to complete the tasks.
Oh, so it's not just about how vivid your imagination is.
Right. It's about how you use it.
It's how you use it. Okay. So the study points to this idea that we use both shared and task-specific resources when processing visual and spatial information.
Yeah, it's a complex system for sure.
That's a good way to put it. Let's dig a bit deeper into the discussion section of the paper. How did they explain these findings?
They emphasize that performance on the visual memory task was mostly limited by the number of things people had to remember.
The set size.
Right, the set size. The delay time mattered less.
Okay, so how many things, not how long you had to remember them.
Yeah. And interestingly, there was no interaction between set size and delay.
Meaning they didn't influence each other.
Right. With the mental rotation task, they saw the typical pattern.
Which is?
Accuracy going down and reaction time going up as the angle of rotation increased.
Okay, so the harder it is to rotate the object, the worse you do and the longer it takes.
Exactly. But here's the thing.
Oh.
Only about 41% of people showed the expected linear increase in reaction time with angle.
Oh, wow. So more than half.
More than half didn't show that typical pattern, which again suggests that people use different strategies.
Right. Different ways of mentally rotating things.
Exactly. It's not one size fits all.
Right. So what about those correlations between visual memory and mental rotation? The ones we talked about before.
Right. Well, they stayed pretty weak even when the tasks were made harder,
Okay.
which further supports the idea that these two abilities rely on at least partially different mechanisms in the brain.
So two different parts of the brain doing different things.
In a simplified way, yeah.
Okay. And what about imagery vividness?
Well, that didn't seem to directly affect how well people did.
Huh. Oh.
So they think it might mostly influence how people approach the tasks, their strategies, rather than their overall ability.
So having a good imagination doesn't guarantee you'll be good at these tasks, but it might affect how you go about doing them.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting. The paper also talked about some methodological things to consider and limitations.
Right, like any good research paper.
Right. What did they point out?
Well, first, they had to exclude a lot of participants in this online study.
Oh, more than they expected.
More than they expected, yeah. So they acknowledged that this could limit how much we can generalize these findings to a wider population.
Okay, so it might not apply to everyone.
Right. They also talked about how their measurements were more reliable for mental rotation than for visual memory.
Okay, so the measurements weren't equally good for both tasks.
Right, and they said this could have made it harder to find a strong relationship between the two, even if one exists.
So it might have masked the true correlation?
Potentially, yeah. And the reliability of some of their calculated scores, like the effects of set size or delay, was pretty low. So they said to be careful with interpreting those results.
Okay, good to know. So theoretically, what are the big takeaways from this paper?
Well, it supports a more nuanced view of how our brains handle visual and spatial info.
Okay,
It's not one big unified system,
right.
but it's not a bunch of completely separate modules either.
So somewhere in between.
Yeah, it seems to be this complex mix of shared and task-specific components.
That we use strategically, depending on what we're doing.
Exactly. It's all about adaptability.
Cool. Any practical implications? Like, what can we do with this knowledge?
Well, they suggested that if we want to improve someone's spatial reasoning, just training one skill might not be enough.
So, like, just practicing mental rotation wouldn't necessarily make your visual memory better.
Right. They think a more comprehensive approach, targeting both general and specific skills, might be needed.
Okay, that makes sense. And they also said it's important to remember that people use different strategies.
Oh, right, we talked about that.
Yeah, and to maybe even adjust our teaching methods to accommodate that, especially in education.
So personalized learning. Yeah, something like that.
So much to think about. This AI generated research paper is really insightful. And it's fascinating how its findings kind of echo the bigger observations from the AI scientist case study. This has been a wild ride, you know? Learning about the potential of AI in science and the complexities of human spatial cognition,
Hey.
all these surprising discoveries, the AI doing its own research,
Right.
the unexpected independence of visual memory and mental rotation,
Yeah,
the subtle role of imagery vividness, it really makes you question what you thought you knew.
absolutely. So for everyone listening, what stood out to you the most? What do you think about AI being able to conduct scientific research? And how might these findings about how our brains work change how you approach difficult tasks?
Those are great questions to ponder. Given what this AI can do and what it's discovered about us, it makes you wonder what other long held assumptions in science or in our understanding of the mind might need to be revisited. Maybe this deep dive has inspired you to explore some new ideas. You could keep an eye out for that detailed report from Explore Science, or maybe just spend some time reflecting on your own experiences with visual memory and mental rotation.
There's always more to discover.
Always. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. It's been a real pleasure.